Hi everybody, this is Maureen Wong for YourNextStamp.com. Today we're going to be making this tall and skinny card, and it's using a technique called the spotlighting technique, where you stamp an image once and leave it uncolored, and then you stamp it again, color a bit, and cut it out, and then stick it over the uncolored portion where it goes. And this makes a spotlight on this particular part of the image, whatever image you want to highlight. One reason I decided to make this card, this isn't something that I came up with. The spotlighting technique has been around for a really long time, and I've been stamping for a really long time, so I thought I'd show you in case you hadn't seen it before. And the other thing that's great about this, besides that it's a nice, unique look, is if you're having one of those days where you just don't feel like coloring a whole big image, you can color just this little bit and you get a great looking card without having to do all the coloring. So if you're not into coloring generally, or if you're just having a non-coloring kind of day, this is a great card for you. You can still buy these really pretty line images and do something great with them. So let's get started. Okay, for supplies, we're going to be using, first of all, the stamp set from Your Next Stamp called Little Darling Rapunzel. I think she's just really adorable, but there's a lot of coloring. So that's why I chose her for this particular technique. Then we're going to be using the YNS circle die set. This is a set of 8 circles, and I'm going to pick one to do the spotlight technique. And then I have just plain Georgia Pacific white cardstock. Of course, you can use whatever you want. This larger one is cut 6 inches tall by 2.5 inches wide. And then I have this little scrap that's, I don't know how tall, but it's 2.5 inches wide also. And this is what we're going to do our spotlight on. I have my Misty, and as always, you don't have to use it, but I'm going to use it here, and I'll show you how I'm going to be using it in just a second. So first of all, what we need to do is put down our larger piece of cardstock. We're going to be stamping the whole image of the Rapunzel in VersaFine. We're not going to be doing any coloring. You know, usually when I do my coloring, I like to stamp in Memento because it dries really fast, and then I go ahead and get out my VersaFine and overstamp it. But in this case, I'm just going to be stamping in the VersaMark because, VersaFine, because I'm not going to be doing any kind of coloring on this. And I have one of my bumpers out. This is the 2.5 inch bumper, and what I'm going to do is use it to line up my stamp. This stamp has I don't know if you can see it. Actually, let me show you on the picture. This stamp has a straight line coming right down the side of the castle, or tower, I guess it is. And so I want that line to be straight. So I'm going to be using my bumper as a guide. And I'm going to be lining this up so that hopefully that line is very straight. I think I've got it there, so I'm going to pick up the stamp with my Misty cover, and there we go. Okay, so I'm going to stamp her in VersaFine Onyx Black ink because I'm not going to be coloring her. Not this part anyway. I'm not going to be coloring, so that's why I'm using the VersaFine right away instead of the Memento first. And I'm going to stamp her down. And make sure she's perfect, and she is. So I'm just going to set this aside and let it dry. Then I'm going to take my scrap piece, and this is where my 2.5 inch bumper comes back in. I'm going to put that down at the bottom, and then I'm going to put my scrap piece on top, and I'm gonna just check and make sure, yes, that the scrap piece is falling where I want it, and I want it to go this way. So, and actually I need to clean off my stamp first because I'm going to be stamping this in Memento, which is the stamp ink that I like to use before I color because it's super fast drying. So that's cleaned off. I'm going to get out my Memento Tuxedo Black ink, and I don't have to ink up the whole image, just the top area where I'm going to be stamping on that scrap. Okay, and that's fine. So I'm going to put my Misty away and reposition my camera, and I'll be right back for coloring. Oh, actually, before that, let me put my Misty away, and I'm going to take out my circle die set and pick one from my spotlighting technique, and I think I'm going to pick that one is a little bit small, so let me try this one. This is the third from the smallest, and that looks good. So I'm going to get a pencil. I'm going to position that die exactly where I want it to go. And then I am going to trace around this circle, and that is going to tell me where to color, so I don't have to bother coloring more than I need to. Okay, so there you see the circle, and the die cutting edge is in the middle of that, so it's actually going to cut a little bit inside of that circle, so I don't have to worry about erasing. So I could actually do this in pen if I wanted, but I just did it in pencil to show you. And so I'm just going to make sure that everything in that circular area is colored, and that's all I need for my spotlighting technique. Okay, so now I'm going to adjust my camera. Okay, here I am coloring, and I'm going to speed this up so you don't have to watch it forever. I'm starting off on her hair with yellow ochre number 034, and by the way, these are my new Luminance pencils from Caran d'Ache that I just received, so I am having a lot of fun playing with them. This is burnt ochre 50%, 876. And then I'm blending that dark shadows out with the burnt ochre 10%, which is number 872. Then for her dress, I'm using ultramarine pink, number 083. This is moss green, number 225. Scarlet, number 070. Then that's the same ultramarine pink for the tiara, and then I threw in a little bit of purplish red, number 350 for the gemstones. Now for the tower background, I'm using French gray, number 806. This is the darkest of the grays that I'm using, and I'm basically just putting in the shadowing and the underneath cast shadows and whatnot. Then I'm coming in with French gray 30%, which is my medium gray, number 803, and I am coloring the middle grays. And you can see I'm not doing a really great job coloring. This is French gray 10%, number 802. I just want it colored. I don't want it super shaded, really totally awesome. It doesn't have to be that, because just the fact of it being spotlighted, or spotlit I guess, is gonna look nice. And this is light cobalt blue, number 661. Okay, so here's my finished image, and I just wanted to show you this is all the pencils, or these are all the pencils that I used, and it looks like kind of a lot, and there was a lot of different coloring going on there, but as you saw from the video, I didn't do a lot of shading, and it's a pretty simple coloring job. So don't be scared by the amount of pencils like I was when I was pulling out all these colors. I thought, wow, this is gonna be a lot of work, but it really wasn't. You could see that. So our next step is that we're gonna take that same circle die that we used earlier, and I'm gonna use my pencil line that I traced earlier, and I'm going to line this up with the pencil line. And then I'm going to tape it in place, and I only have this tiny piece of tape, but that should do. And then I'm going to run it through my die cut machine. Okay, and there you go. Just take this out of the circle, and there's our little spotlight. And you can see when I put it over, of course, it fits right in. And that's the spotlighting. Whoops, sorry, I'm a little bit out of frame. There we go. That is the spotlight. But we're gonna raise it up on foam tape so that it's a little more noticeable and dimensional. And so let me get out my foam tape. And I'm just gonna get some of this out. And then I'm not going to put it on my image yet because I still want to mount this panel on my card base. Okay, so I just realized I totally forgot to do one step, and that was the overstamping of the image. And so at this point it's going to be really hard. I have all this foam tape on it, so I'm just gonna skip that step. But if you'd wanted to do the overstamping to get a darker impression of the VersaFine Onyx Black, you should have done that, of course, before you cut it out of the circle. You would have lined it back up on this bumper, and I haven't moved the stamp, so it would stamp in exactly the same place. But since I forgot that step and it still looks really good, I'm just gonna skip over that. And then another thing was I forgot to color in her little lips, so I did that off camera. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make the rest of the card really plain because I really want that spotlight to be shown off. So what I've done is I've taken my panel, and remember this was 6 inches tall by 2.5 inches wide, and I cut this black panel 1/8 of an inch taller and 1/8 of an inch wider, and then this base is 2 3/4, not 2 3/4. Oh yeah, it's 2 3/4 by 6 1/4 inches tall. And I'm gonna stamp in my sentiment before I do my assembly of the card. So let me just stick that down. I'm gonna remove this stamp because I'm done with it. And then I'm gonna take the sentiment from the set, Never Stop Dreaming, because I just love that sentiment. And I'm going to position it on the inside of my card. And actually what I want to do is use my bumper to make sure I get that straight. Okay, so I'm going to pick that up with the cover of my Misty. And I'm going to hold this down with a magnet. And again, I'm going to use my VersaFine Onyx Black because that is my go-to for sentiments, unless I'm doing them in color, which I could do this in color. It would be nice in color, but I'm going to keep with my very plain theme to highlight the spotlight. And there we go, Never Stop Dreaming. Okay, so I can put my Misty away. And then I'm going to assemble my card. So So the first thing I do is assemble or put adhesive on the back of the black panel. I'm using my ATG gun, and this has very little wiggle room, so I have to be really careful centering it. Okay, there we go. And then on the back of my stamped image, the plain stamped image, which is actually the full-size image. And then again, very little room here, so we're going to center that just perfectly. And then finally the spotlight, and this is the hardest part of the card, I think, because on foam tape it's going to take a little bit to match up all those little parts of the card. And excuse me if my head gets in the way a little bit here, but I'm going to look over it and make sure that I am lining it up correctly. And that looks about right. Sorry, did I just poke my head in the camera? Okay, so there's the spotlight card. Okay, so here's the finished card, and sorry about that little blip there. My camera battery just died, so I had to restart. This is your finished card, and the finished size is, this is what I call a bill size envelope. It's called a 6 3/4 size envelope. It's just a little bit skinnier than the full width of the envelope, but you can still use it. It might move around a little bit, but not a lot. But the height is perfect for that envelope, and that's why I chose that height. And that's all for now, so I hope you like this project, and I hope we'll see you over at yournextstamp.com for these products and many, many others. Thanks very much for watching.